70 brides, and Ryan Kim walked past every single one. The Grand Ballroom at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan was a war zone of white lace and shattered expectations. 70 women in custom wedding gowns standing in perfect rows like soldiers waiting for a general who would never arrive. Their families clutching programs that cost more than cars. Photographers with cameras that had been paid to capture a union between New York's most powerful Korean crime family and the daughters of every elite family desperate for the connection, and Ryan Kim. Groom, the heir, the man who was supposed to choose his bride from this manufactured selection, stood at the back in trance in his Tom Ford tuxedo watching the chaos unfold and feeling absolutely nothing except the desperate need to run. This wasn't a wedding. It was a business transaction, his father's final power move before retiring. 70 potential alliances laid out like a buffet where Ryan was supposed to pick the one that gave the family the most leverage, the most territory, the most control, and every single woman in that ballroom knew it. Knew they were being auditioned not for love, but for strategic value. And Ryan had looked at all 70 profiles his father had assembled, seen their perfect faces and perfect pedigrees and perfect lack of anything real, and decided he'd rather destroy his father's empire than marry someone he didn't even know. His best friend Christopher grabbed his arm as Ryan turned toward the exit, said, "You can't just leave. Your father will kill you. Those families will go to war." And Ryan said, "Let them," because he'd spent 29 years being the perfect heir, and he was done, completely done. Finished with performing a role he'd never auditioned for. But here's what you need to know before this story goes anywhere, before I tell you about the woman who changed everything. Hit that subscribe button and buckle up, because this romance is about to get wild. Ryan walked out of his own wedding, left 70 brides and their families and his father's carefully constructed empire standing in that ballroom. And he got in his black Mercedes and drove with no destination, just away from expectations and duty and the weight of a legacy he'd never wanted. And he ended up in Brooklyn at 2 in the morning at an all-night diner that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1985, fluorescent lights buzzing, cracked vinyl booths, and exactly one waitress, working the graveyard shift. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the manufactured perfection he'd just escaped. Dark skin glowing under the harsh lights. Natural hair pulled back in a ponytail, exhaustion in her eyes, but kindness too. And she looked at him in his expensive tuxedo like he was lost, which he was, completely and utterly lost. "Kitchen's about to close," she said, and her voice was honey and smoke, warm despite the hour. "But I can get you coffee and pie if you're not too picky about the pie." Ryan sat at the counter and said, "Coffee's fine," and she poured it without asking how he took it. Just slid the cup across Formica that had seen better decades. And something about that simple gesture, that lack of performance, made his chest ache in a way he couldn't explain. "Rough night?" she asked, wiping down the counter, and Ryan looked at his reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser. Saw a man in a tuxedo who'd just abandoned 70 potential brides, and laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "You could say that. Wedding or funeral?" she asked, nodding at his formal wear, and her directness surprised him, cut through the careful politeness he was used to from people who knew his name and reputation. "Was supposed to be a wedding," Ryan admitted, "but I left before anyone could say I do." She stopped wiping, looked at him with those dark eyes that saw too much, and said, "Good for you." Like running away from your own wedding was the sanest thing in the world, and Ryan felt something shift in his chest. Something he'd thought was permanently frozen. "I'm Sienna," she said, extending a hand across the counter. "And I've seen a lot of people running from something walk through that door at 2 a.m., but you're the first one in a tux." Ryan shook her hand, felt warmth spread through his palm, and said, "Ryan," leaving off his last name, because for once he wanted to be just a man, not an heir, not a crime boss, not the son who'd just destroyed 70 family alliances. "Well, Ryan," Sienna said, pulling her hand back, but smiling now, really smiling, and it hit him like lightning. "You want to tell me what you're running from, or should I just keep the coffee coming?" But before he could answer, his phone exploded with calls. his father's name flashing over and over, and Christopher's, and numbers he didn't recognize. And Sienna glanced at the phone, then back at his face, and said, "Whoever they are, they can wait." And she refilled his coffee like she was giving him permission to exist outside of his obligations for just 5 minutes. Ryan turned off his phone. "I was supposed to choose a wife tonight," he said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "From 70 women I've never met, never spoken to, don't know anything about except what's in their family portfolios. And I stood there looking at them all and realized I couldn't do it. Couldn't pick someone like I was shopping for a car." Sienna leaned against the counter, studied him with an expression he couldn't read, and said, "So you ran." "So I ran," Ryan confirmed. "Smartest thing you've said all night," Sienna said. And something about her approval, her complete lack of judgment, made Ryan want to tell her everything. About his father's empire built on fear, about the brother he'd lost to violence, about spending his whole life trying to be someone he wasn't. But his phone lit up again even though it was silenced, and this time it was a text from Christopher. "Your father is losing his mind. The families are threatening war. You need to come back now." Ryan showed Sienna the text, watched her read it, waited for her to tell him to go, to fix it, to do his duty, but instead she said, "You want more coffee?" And Ryan realized he was falling for a woman who'd just met him and was already on his side, and he had absolutely no idea what happened next. Sienna Clark had 3 rules for surviving the graveyard shift at Rosie's Diner in Brooklyn, and the first was never get involved with customers who looked like trouble. The second was never accept phone numbers from men in expensive suits. And the third was absolutely never ever feel sympathy for rich people who created their own problems. But watching Ryan sit at her counter looking like his world had just ended was testing every single rule she'd ever made. She'd been working at Rosie's for 4 years, ever since she'd moved to New York from California, chasing dreams that had slowly died in audition waiting rooms and rejection emails. And she'd seen every type of person walk through that door at 2 a.m., drunks and insomniacs, and people running from things they couldn't name. But Ryan was different. Ryan looked like he'd just escaped prison and didn't know what to do with freedom. "You're staring," Ryan said, not looking up from his coffee, and Sienna realized she'd been standing there like an idiot instead of doing her closing duties. "Sorry," she said, grabbing a rag and wiping down tables that were already clean. "It's just 70 brides is a lot of brides. That's biblical levels of bride." Ryan laughed, really laughed, and the sound transformed his face from handsome to absolutely devastating. And Sienna felt her heart do something stupid in her chest. "My father is old school," Ryan explained. "Believes in arranged marriages, strategic alliances, using marriage as a business tool, and he gave me 70 options thinking I'd be grateful for the choice." "But you weren't," Sienna said, more statement than question. "I was suffocating," Ryan said quietly, and there was something so raw in his voice that Sienna forgot about her rules, forgot about staying distant, just sat down across from him in the booth like they were friends instead of strangers. They talked until 4 a.m. when Rosie's finally closed, Sienna learning that Ryan spoke 3 languages and hated all of them, that he'd wanted to be a teacher but inherited a crime empire instead, that he had a scar on his ribs from a knife fight when he was 17 and nightmares about the things he'd seen. And Ryan learned that Sienna had a younger sister in California she sent money to every month, that she'd almost made it as an actress once, but the role went to someone with better connections, that she worked 3 jobs and still barely survived, but refused to give up because giving up felt like dying. "You're extraordinary," Ryan said when Sienna finally locked the diner door behind them. And she laughed because men said things like that all the time, usually right before they tried to get something from her. "That's a line," Sienna said, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold. "It's the truth," Ryan insisted, and something in his eyes made her believe him, made her think maybe he was different from every other man who tried to charm his way into her life. "I should go," Sienna said, "because this was dangerous. This man was dangerous. Not in a physical way, but in a way that could break her heart if she let him." "Can I see you again?" Ryan asked, and Sienna should have said no, should have walked away, should have remembered her rules, But instead she heard herself say, "I work the morning shift tomorrow at a cafe in Soho, if you happen to be in the neighborhood." Ryan's smile was bright enough to light the dark street, and Sienna wondered what she'd just started. But what Sienna didn't know was that back at the Plaza Hotel, 70 families were demanding answers. Ryan's father was making threats, and Christopher was trying to hold together an empire that was one wrong move away from civil war. Ryan showed up at her cafe at 6 a.m. looking like he hadn't slept, and Sienna's coworker Rachel elbowed her and whispered, "Girl, who is that?" Because Ryan in jeans and a leather jacket was somehow more devastating than Ryan in a tuxedo. "Coffee?" Sienna asked, keeping her voice professional even though her hands were shaking. "And you," Ryan said, quietly, "if you're on the menu." Rachel made a noise that was definitely not professional, and Sienna felt her face heat, but she poured his coffee and tried to focus on other customers and not the way Ryan watched her like she was the only person in the room. Her shift ended at noon, and Ryan was still there, coffee long cold, just waiting. And when Sienna came out from the back in her regular clothes, Ryan stood like she was royalty. "Lunch?" he asked. "I don't date customers," Sienna said, testing him. "Good thing I'm not a customer anymore," Ryan said. "I'm just a guy who wants to know you better." They went to a tiny Thai place in her neighborhood, and Sienna found herself telling him things she'd never told anyone. About her brother who died in a gang shooting back in Oakland, about the promise she'd made to never get involved with violence, about dreams that were slowly being ground down by reality. "I'm not violent," Ryan said carefully. "But my world is, my family is, everything I touch has blood on it somewhere. And Sienna, I need you to know that before this goes any further." "This?" Sienna asked. "This thing between us," Ryan said. "This thing I felt the moment you said good for you, like running away was brave instead of cowardly. This thing that's making me want to rebuild my entire life just to be someone worthy of your time." "That's too much," Sienna said, heart racing. "You don't even know me." "Then let me know you," Ryan said. And he reached across the table and took her hand, and Sienna felt electricity shoot straight to her soul. But then her phone rang. Her sister calling from California, and when Sienna answered, her sister was crying, saying something about hospital bills and rent, and Sienna felt the familiar weight of responsibility crush her chest. "How much?" Sienna asked, and her sister named a number that made Sienna want to throw up. $5,000 she didn't have and couldn't get. Ryan was watching her with those dark eyes, and when she hung up, he said, "I can help." "No," Sienna said immediately. "Absolutely not. I don't take money from men I barely know." "It's not about the money," Ryan said. "It's about helping someone you care about." "It's always about something," Sienna said, standing up. "And I've learned that nothing is free, especially for men who look like you and have money like you do." "Sienna," Ryan started, but she was already walking away, already putting distance between them, already remembering why her rules existed. Ryan caught up to her on the street, said, "I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to help." And Sienna turned on him with fire in her eyes. "I don't need saving," she said. "I need to be left alone." She walked away and didn't look back, and Ryan stood on that Brooklyn sidewalk feeling like he'd just lost something he'd only just found. Ryan had his accountant wire $5,000 to Sienna's sister anonymously, because if she wouldn't let him help directly, he'd help anyway. And Christopher said, "You're obsessed with a woman who rejected you." And Ryan said, "I'm in love with a woman who has principles," and meant every word. 3 days passed with no contact, Ryan respecting her boundaries even though it killed him. And then Sienna showed up at his penthouse in Manhattan at midnight, security calling up to ask if he wanted them to remove her, and Ryan said, "Send her up immediately." She stormed off the elevator like a hurricane, eyes blazing, and Ryan thought she'd never looked more beautiful. "You had no right," Sienna said. "No right to send money to my sister. No right to interfere in my life. No right to act like you know what's best for me." "You're right," Ryan agreed. "I overstepped. I'm sorry." Sienna blinked, clearly expecting a fight, not an apology, and some of the fire went out of her eyes. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Because you were hurting," Ryan said simply. And I have resources I'll never use. And helping your sister cost me nothing but meant everything to her. To you. And Sienna, I would do it again in a heartbeat, even knowing you'd hate me for it. I don't hate you, Sienna said quietly, and Ryan's heart stuttered. But I can't be with someone who throws money at problems, who thinks wealth solves everything, who lives in a penthouse while I'm working 3 jobs just to survive. Then tell me how to do this right, Ryan said. Tell me how to be in your life without overstepping, because walking away isn't an option anymore, not for me. Sienna was quiet for a long moment, looking around his penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive art, and Ryan saw himself through her eyes, saw the inequality, the imbalance, the impossibility of their worlds colliding. Take me somewhere real, Sienna said finally. Not fancy restaurants or penthouse apartments. Somewhere that matters to you. Somewhere that shows me who you are when you're not trying to be impressive. So Ryan took her to the community center in Queens where he'd been teaching Taekwondo to kids from low-income families for the last 3 years, and Sienna watched him interact with children who looked at him like he was a hero, who called him Mr. Ryan and showed him their homework and told him about their weeks. This is what I want to do, Ryan said as they sat on the steps outside. Open centers all over the city, give kids alternatives to the streets, create programs that actually help instead of just throwing money at problems. But my father says it's a waste of time, says I should focus on the family business. Your father is wrong, Sienna said firmly, and Ryan looked at her like she'd just given him permission to breathe. They spent the afternoon together, Sienna helping with the kids, and Ryan watched her natural warmth draw everyone to her, watched her make children laugh and feel valued, and he fell even harder. I need to tell you something, Ryan said as they walked to the subway later, and his voice was serious enough that Sienna stopped walking. When I say family business, I mean crime family, Ryan said. My father built an empire on illegal operations, and I inherited it when my brother died, and I've spent the last 5 years trying to make it legitimate. But Sienna, I've done things, bad things, things that would make you walk away if you knew the details. Sienna was quiet, processing, and Ryan prepared himself for rejection. Tell me the worst thing, she said finally. I've killed people, Ryan said. In self-defense, protecting my territory, but still, I've taken lives, and I carry that weight every single day. My brother was killed by gang violence, Sienna said. 5 years ago, he was 22, and I swore I'd never have anything to do with that world. I understand, Ryan said. If you need to walk away, but you're trying to change things, Sienna interrupted. You're teaching kids, transitioning to legitimate business. You told me the truth even knowing it might end this. And Ryan, that means something. Is it enough? Ryan asked. I don't know yet, Sienna admitted. But I want to find out, if you're willing to be patient while I figure it out. Ryan pulled her close and kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent, and Sienna felt her walls cracking. But across the city, in the Plaza Hotel conference room, Ryan's father was meeting with the 70 families he'd offended, and his solution to the Ryan problem was simple and brutal. Eliminate the distraction, make the waitress disappear, force his son back in line. The order was given, and Sienna had no idea she'd just become a target. Sienna should have seen the warning signs, the black SUV that kept appearing on her street, the men in suits who watched her cafe, the feeling of being followed, but she was too caught up in Ryan, in late-night conversations and stolen kisses, and the way he looked at her like she was precious. They'd been seeing each other for 2 weeks, careful and slow, Ryan letting her set the pace, and Sienna was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this impossible thing could work. Then everything fell apart. She was closing Rosie's Diner alone on a Tuesday night when 3 men walked in, expensive suits and cold eyes, and Sienna knew immediately they weren't there for pie. You're the waitress, the lead man said, not a question. Sienna's hand found the panic button under the counter, pressed it hoping the police were close, and said, We're closed. Ryan's father sends a message. The man continued, ignoring her. Stay away from his son or face consequences. I don't respond to threats, Sienna said, voice steadier than she felt. The man smiled. and it was the cruelest thing Sienna had ever seen. And he said, "This isn't a threat. It's a courtesy warning. Next time we won't be so polite." And then they left, disappeared into the night before police arrived. Sienna called Ryan with shaking hands, told him what happened, and Ryan's voice went deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. And he said, "Pack a bag. I'm sending security to get you. You're not safe there anymore." "I'm not running," Sienna said. "I'm not letting your father dictate my life." "Sienna, please," Ryan said, and she could hear fear in his voice, real fear. "These men don't make idle threats. They will hurt you to get to me." "Then deal with your father," Sienna said, "because I'm not hiding, and I'm not leaving. And if this relationship means you going to war with your family, then maybe we need to reconsider what we're doing." She hung up before he could respond, and immediately regretted it, but pride and fear kept her from calling back. Ryan showed up at her apartment 20 minutes later, bypassing her roommate, storming into her room like he owned it, and Sienna had never seen him like this, fury and terror mixing in his eyes. "You don't get to make this decision alone," Ryan said. "You don't get to risk your life because you're too stubborn to accept help. And you don't get to control me because we're dating," Sienna shot back. "I've been taking care of myself long before you walked past 70 brides." "Those 70 brides weren't real," Ryan said, voice breaking. "You're real. We're real. And Sienna, I can't lose you. Not to my father's violence. Not to your pride. Not to anything." Sienna felt her anger drain away, saw the genuine fear in his eyes, remembered her brother, and how quickly violence could take everything. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. "Let me protect you," Ryan said. "Just until I can handle my father. Just until I can make sure you're safe." "And then what?" Sienna asked. "We keep hiding? We keep letting your father control our lives? Ryan, this isn't sustainable." "Then I'll end it," Ryan said, and there was something final in his voice, something that sounded like a decision made. "End what?" Sienna asked. "All of it," Ryan said. "The family business, my father's control, the entire empire if that's what it takes. Because Sienna, I walked past 70 perfect options and saw nothing. Then I saw you and my whole world shifted, and I'm not giving that up. Not for power, not for family, not for anything." Sienna pulled him close, and they stood there in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, holding each other like they could prevent the storm coming. And Sienna whispered, "I'm scared." "Me too," Ryan admitted. "But I promise you, I will fix this." That night, Ryan went to his father's office and they had it out, voices raised, threats exchanged, and Ryan finally said the words he'd been holding back for years. "I'm done, effective immediately. I'm out. Take your empire and choke on it." His father's response was cold and calculated. "You leave and you lose everything, your money, your power, your protection, and I'll make sure that Waitress pays for taking my son. Then we go to war," Ryan said quietly, "because she's not negotiable." The next morning, Sienna woke to find Ryan gone and a note on her pillow. "Had to handle something. Stay inside today. Trust me, please." And when she turned on the news, she saw footage of a massive fire at Ryan's father's main warehouse. Millions in damage. A message sent loud and clear. Ryan called her that afternoon and said, "It's done. My father and I are finished. He's cutting me off completely. But Sienna, you're safe. I made sure of it." "What did you do?" Sienna asked. "What I had to," Ryan said, "and I'd do it again." But what neither of them knew was that Ryan's father wasn't done, wasn't even close to done, and the real war was just beginning. Sienna opened her apartment door 3 days later to find Ryan's father standing there, and her blood turned to ice because this man radiated danger the way normal people radiated warmth, cold eyes and colder smile, power wrapped in an expensive suit. "Miss Clark," he said, voice polite but laced with venom. "We need to have a conversation about my son." Sienna should have slammed the door, should have called the police, should have done anything except let him inside. But curiosity and defiance made her step aside, made her gesture to the worn couch, made her say talk then. "Ryan has made poor choices his entire life," Mr. Kim said, sitting like he owned the place. But this, choosing a waitress over his family, over his responsibilities, over everything we've built, this is the worst choice yet. I didn't ask him to choose, Sienna said quietly. But you accepted the choice, Mr. Kim said. You let my son burn bridges, destroy alliances, walk away from power. All for what? A woman he's known for 3 weeks. For love, Sienna said firmly. He walked away for love, which you clearly don't understand. Mr. Kim's laugh was sharp and cruel, and he said, love is a fantasy people like you cling to when you have nothing else, but in the real world, in my world, love is a weakness that gets you killed. Then I feel sorry for you, Sienna said, and meant it. Saw the lonely, bitter man beneath the power, saw someone who'd sacrificed everything for control and ended up with nothing that mattered. I'm offering you a deal, Mr. Kim said, leaning forward. $1 million, cash, untraceable. Walk away from Ryan and never contact him again. Sienna felt sick, because part of her, the exhausted part that worked 3 jobs and barely survived, wanted to take it, wanted to solve every financial problem with one word, but the part of her that loved Ryan, that saw the man he was trying to become, that believed in something more than money, that part was louder. No, Sienna said. 5 million, Mr. Kim countered immediately. No, Sienna repeated. You can't buy me, and you can't control your son, and Mr. Kim, the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can stop destroying everything you claim to love. You're making a mistake, Mr. Kim said, standing. My son will resent you eventually, blame you for taking him from his world, and when he does, you'll have nothing, no money, no security, no future. But I'll have love, Sienna said, and that's more than you've ever had. Mr. Kim left without another word, but the threat hung in the air, heavy and real, and Sienna knew this wasn't over. She called Ryan, told him about the visit, and Ryan went silent in a way that terrified her. I'm handling it, Ryan said finally. How? Sienna asked, but Ryan had already hung up, and Sienna felt dread settle in her stomach like lead. That night, Ryan met his father at the Plaza Hotel, the same ballroom where he'd walked away from 70 brides, and they faced each other like enemies instead of family. You threatened her, Ryan said, voice shaking with controlled rage. I offered her a better life, his father corrected. She refused, which means she's either genuinely in love with you or incredibly stupid. She's neither, Ryan said. She's strong and principled and everything I want to be. Then you're both fools, his father said, and fools don't survive in this world. I don't care about surviving in your world, Ryan said. I care about building a new one, and Dad, you're not invited. His father's expression went cold, colder than Ryan had ever seen, and he said, You walk away now and you're dead to me. No second chances, no reconciliation, you'll be nothing, have nothing. And when that waitress leaves you because you can't provide the life she deserves, don't come crawling back. I won't, Ryan said, and turned to leave, but his father's voice stopped him. I tried to build something for you, Mr. Kim said, and for the first time Ryan heard something like vulnerability. Everything I did was to give you power, security, a legacy. I never wanted that legacy, Ryan said without turning around. I wanted a father, and instead I got a crime boss who treated me like a business asset. He left then, walked out of the plaza for the second time, and this time he didn't look back. But when Ryan got back to his now modest apartment, the penthouse sold to sever ties with his father's money, he found Sienna sitting on the steps outside, suitcase beside her, face streaked with tears. What happened? Ryan asked, panic flooding his system. My roommate kicked me out, Sienna said, voice hollow, said she can't have gang violence following me home, said I'm putting everyone in danger, and Ryan, she's right. I am. Your father's men have been watching the building, following my sister, and I can't do this anymore. Don't say that, Ryan said, sitting beside her. Please don't say that. I love you, Sienna said, and those words should have been beautiful, but they sounded like goodbye. I love you so much it terrifies me. But Ryan, look at what we've become. You've lost your family. I've lost my home. We're both in danger. And for what? For love that might not be enough. Love is always enough, Ryan insisted, but even he heard the desperation in his voice. Is it? Sienna asked, because right now it feels like love is just another word for sacrifice, and I'm tired, Ryan. I'm so tired of fighting. Then let me fight for you, Ryan said. Let me handle my father. Let me make this right. How? Sienna asked. How do you make this right when your father has all the power and we have nothing? Ryan didn't have an answer, and Sienna stood up, grabbed her suitcase, and said, I need time to think. I need space to figure out if this is sustainable or if we're just destroying each other slowly. Where will you go? Ryan asked, heartbreaking. My sister's in California, Sienna said. I'll stay with her for a while, clear my head. And Ryan, if you love me, you'll let me go. I do love you, Ryan said, which is why I'm saying goodbye even though it's killing me. She kissed him one last time, soft and sad and final, and then she left, disappeared into the night, and Ryan sat on those steps until dawn wondering how loving someone right could feel so wrong. 3 months passed in misery, Ryan throwing himself into his community work, opening 2 more centers, staying away from his father's world completely, and Sienna in California trying to remember who she was before a runaway groom had changed everything. But fate, it turned out, had other plans. Ryan was teaching a Taekwondo class in his New Queens Center when the door opened and Sienna walked in, and his heart stopped, completely stopped, because she looked different somehow, stronger maybe, or just more herself. Hi, she said, and that one word contained 3 months of separation, of missing each other, of trying to figure out how to live apart. Ryan dismissed the class early, didn't care about protocol, just needed to understand why she was here, why she'd come back, what it meant. Your father had a heart attack, Sienna said without preamble. I saw it on the news. Is he okay? He's alive, Ryan said carefully. Retired now. Doctor's orders. Moved to Connecticut to live with my aunt. So the threat is gone, Sienna observed. Completely, Ryan confirmed. He has no power anymore. No control. The family business was dissolved and sold to legitimate investors. It's over. They sat on the mat where Ryan taught kids to find their strength, and the afternoon sun through the windows was gentle on their faces. I missed you, Sienna said quietly. Every single day I was gone. I missed you. And I kept telling myself I did the right thing, that space was necessary. But Ryan, it felt like I'd cut off my own arm. I've been half dead without you, Ryan admitted. Going through motions, existing but not living. And Sienna, I built all of this. He gestured at the center, hoping that somehow you'd see it and know that I kept my promises, that I chose the better path, that I became someone worthy of you. You were always worthy, Sienna said. I was just scared of violence and sacrifice and losing myself in your world. And now? Ryan asked, voice barely above a whisper. Now I'm more scared of living without you, Sienna said, and smiled, that real genuine smile that had started everything. Now I know that love isn't about avoiding sacrifice. It's about choosing what's worth sacrificing for. Ryan pulled her close and kissed her like he'd been drowning for 3 months, and she was oxygen, and Sienna kissed him back just as desperately, pouring every lonely night into it. I walked past 70 brides, Ryan said against her lips, and chose a waitress who said no. And Sienna, that was the best decision I've ever made. I said no because I was scared, Sienna admitted. But I'm saying yes now. Yes to you. Yes to us. Yes to whatever comes next. Even if it's hard? Ryan asked. Especially if it's hard, Sienna confirmed. Because Ryan, easy love isn't real love. Real love is choosing each other every day, fighting for each other, building something together even when the world says it's impossible. They spent that afternoon planning their future, Ryan showing Sienna his expansion plans for the centers, Sienna telling him about a teaching opportunity in New York that would let her work with kids, both of them rebuilding lives that fit together instead of tore apart. Move in with me, Ryan said as they walked through Brooklyn later, hand in hand. Not because you need to, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. Okay, Sienna said, laughing at how simple it was, how easy life became when you stopped fighting fate. 6 months later, Ryan took Sienna back to Rosie's diner at 2 a.m., the place where they'd met, where she'd served him coffee and given him permission to run from his own wedding, and he got down on one knee in the same booth where they'd first talked. I walked past 70 brides, Ryan said, holding a simple ring because he knew she didn't want anything ostentatious, and chased a waitress who had every reason to say no. And Sienna, you've said yes to so many things since then. Yes to loving me. Yes to building a life with me. Yes to believing in something impossible. So I'm asking if you'll say yes one more time. Will you marry me? Yes, Sienna said, laughing and crying simultaneously. Yes to you. Yes to us. Yes to forever. The wedding was small, intimate, just close friends and family at the Queen's Community Center where they'd fallen back in love. And when Sienna walked down the makeshift aisle, Ryan was crying, not even trying to hide it, looking at her like she was a miracle. You said no, Ryan said when she reached him, smiling through tears. And you didn't give up, Sienna replied, smiling that smile that changed everything. They said their vows, promised forever, kissed while the kids from Ryan's classes cheered and threw flower petals. And it was perfect, absolutely perfect. At the reception, Christopher gave a toast, said, I've known Ryan my whole life. Watched him walk past 70 perfect brides without a second glance, and I thought he was crazy. But then I met Sienna and understood. Sometimes you have to walk past perfection to find something real. Later, as they danced to their first song as husband and wife, Sienna looked up at this man who'd abandoned an empire for her and said, Do you regret it? Walking away from all that power? Not even for a second, Ryan said, pulling her closer. Because Sienna, I didn't walk away from anything. I walked toward everything that mattered, toward you, toward love, toward a life that's actually worth living. I love you, Sienna whispered. I love you more, Ryan said, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. Somewhere in Manhattan, in a ballroom very much like the one where 70 brides had waited, someone else was getting married, traditional and arranged and strategic, and they would never know that the man who'd walked away had found something infinitely more precious than power or prestige. He'd found love, real messy, complicated, beautiful love. And it all started because he'd been brave enough to run, and she'd been brave enough to eventually say yes. If you loved Ryan and Sienna's journey from 70 brides to one true love, smash that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. Was it the diner meeting, the separation, or the reunion? And let me know what story you want next. Should we follow Christopher's secret romance or dive into Sienna's sister's love story? You decide. Thanks for being here, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what everyone expects and chase what your heart knows is real. See you in the next one.